Hi, this is Mr. Evans. This video is going to look at how to use information from a case study to build an argument. The question is one that I would imagine would be particularly likely to, I don't think it's likely to come up, but I want to show you how to use the data in a paper 2 case study particularly to build an argument. The question is, discuss the extent to which the merger between Pfizer and Allergan is likely to be successful. Now then, this is a question that you're going to need to use the case study. It's highly unlikely that you've got enough knowledge of Pfizer and Allergan in order to build an argument yourself. And in the paper 2, you are given some case studies that will help you to build an argument. So it's really important to draw on them and read them. So paper 2 has 3 case studies. I can't emphasize the importance enough of just reading the questions before you read the case study, so you can read the case study with some purpose. Each question in paper 2 has about 3 questions related to it, and when you know what the questions are, you can highlight the case study in a way that's going to be beneficial, maybe using 3 different highlighters. You can, if it's useful for question 1A, you highlight it in green. If it's useful for question 1B, you highlight in yellow, etc. There's lots of different ways to read the case study, but I really think it's important to make sure you read the questions first. And so, without much further ado, let's get on with answering this question, which is, will the merger between Pfizer and Allergan be successful? And I've actually taken these from an Edexcel paper, but it's similar for AQA. So it might just be worth you reading this, pausing the video. And then, as is typical in AQA, you've got an extract B, maybe some data presented in a table like this. This is something that I threw in that might also be useful. And some information on Hofstede as well. So, as usual, it might be worth you just bullet pointing your answer to this question. It will probably make the video more helpful. If you've got an idea of what you would do, try to have a look at this data to build your argument. What are the reasons that the merger is likely to be successful? And as usual, I have a plan for my essay. The examiner's reports from the 2017 exam made it clear that the best students plan their answers, and that occurred through all of these evaluation questions throughout the exam. So this is how I've chosen to answer the question. First of all, we've got a very interesting word in this question, which is successful. Now, there's loads of different ways to analyse whether a business or not is successful. So what I've done in my first paragraph here is where it said the extent to which mergers between public limited companies could be judged successful would predominantly be the extent to which synergies between the companies can be realised and whether or not the financial performance of the business improved. Now, successful is such a wide word. I could judge it on human resource success, whether it increases labour productivity, whether it increases motivation. I could look at marketing success, will it improve brand image, blah, blah, blah. All of those things I could talk about, but I've decided to focus on talking about synergies and financial performance. And so I'm making that very clear to the examiner here in my opening paragraph. When I talk about success in the context of this essay that I'm choosing to produce, it's going to be about synergies and financial performance. So the merger between these 2 pharmaceutical companies could be successful for a number of reasons. One being that this merger reduces the risk of following a strategy of diversification for both organisations. The companies seem to specialise in producing different drugs, and each will have a specialised knowledge of the markets they predominantly sell in. For Pfizer, the US, and for Allergan, the EU. Were either company to attempt to enter these new markets without the benefit of the combined expertise of the other business, such an expansion would be very expensive due to the need for developing distribution networks and conducting market research. Through the merger, Pfizer will benefit from Allergan's experience in selling their products to customers they are familiar with, and therefore the risks and costs of diversification are minimised, which should help to improve the financial performance of both companies. So what I've tried to do here is just basically explain how synergies reduce the risk of diversification. So although I've not mentioned Ansoff, I've tried to bring it in here. Ansoff's model was, of course, about the risk of undertaking different strategies in terms of selling new products, and I've said here that the merger should reduce the risk of diversification, and I've tried to link that back to financial performance. However, it is notoriously difficult for large and complex organisations to undertake a successful merger and benefit from synergies. Typical problems include integrating computer and IT systems, corporate cultures and management structures. There may be resistance from employees due to parochial self-interest, as it seems like the merger could lead to job losses. Therefore, to ensure the merger is successful, it is important that good management systems are put into place to help manage the transition. So I've just tried here to include some balance in my analysis by saying how difficult it is for mergers to be successful. It's very difficult to realise those synergies that businesses often think they will do. And I've given some reasons why, and I've tried to bring in Cotter and Schlesinger as well in terms of parochial self-interest. So hopefully you can see that I've included some balance there to my analysis. A major reason for the merger seems to be for Pfizer to benefit from moving their headquarters to Ireland, which enjoys a much lower corporation tax rate than the US. So I'm using the information from the case study. They will also benefit from being inside the EU, a single market of 500 million consumers. At the moment, they're headquartered in the US. At the moment, as they're headquartered in the US, Pfizer products will be subject to tariffs when they're imported and sold in the EU. By locating in Ireland, they will avoid the tariff barrier, and therefore their products will become cheaper and more competitive in the EU. So by moving to Ireland, Pfizer should increase their revenues through additional sales in the EU and reduce costs through paying lower corporation tax. So although I've not explicitly linked this to financial performance, then it should be clear to the examiner that I'm continuing to analyse whether or not this merger will be successful by talking about increased revenues, lower costs, in other words, financial performance. So for some balance, however, this does assume that demand for drugs is price elastic, which may not be the case if they're a necessity for consumers. In other words, just because drugs are cheaper, you're going to buy more of them. All right, medicines are being cheaper. I buy a medicine if I'm ill, and quite frankly, I don't care what the price is. I want to get well. I'll pay the price for the medicine as long as I can afford it. So, you know, just cutting the price of medicines I don't think it's hugely likely to make loads of people buy them. In addition to this, the merger may not be well received by the general public if it is believed to be occurring in order to benefit from lower taxes. Multinational corporations such as Starbucks and Amazon have received huge amounts of negative publicity due to trying to benefit from favourable tax arrangements, so this merger could cause reputational damage for Pfizer, especially in their home market of the USA. So a bit of balance here about this move from the US to Ireland for Pfizer, which seems to be a major reason behind this merger. Finally, the national cultures of the two countries that these businesses are located in seem very similar. The US and Ireland score very similarly. It's not great English, but very closely maybe. The US and Ireland score very closely in all of the components of Hofstede's national cultures research. This would be encouraging, as it is likely to make this global merger more successful, as it seems the culture between the organisations may be similar. This would make the transition of the merger smoother, as teams could work together closely, boosting financial performance. However, this is a somewhat simplistic assumption because it ignores the fact that corporate cultures are subject to many influences, and there can be hugely different corporate cultures even between businesses in the same country. So I'm trying to present an argument that because of this data that Hofstede has collected on the Ireland and the USA, on Ireland and the USA, you know, maybe the cultures between the two organisations will be quite similar. Culture is often a big stumbling block in mergers, But I've evaluated that by saying actually corporate cultures are different even within different national cultures. So, my conclusion. In conclusion, I believe that the merger between Pfizer and Allergan is likely to be successful in the long run. This is because it's likely that the two businesses will be able to exploit their synergies and use each other's distribution networks to sell their products in new markets, ultimately raising revenues and profits. So I've got an answer. It's likely to be successful in the long run, and I've backed that up through something I've already discussed, the synergies, reduced risk of diversification, boosting revenues and profits. However, I believe that financial performance may suffer in the short term due to the negative publicity the deal is likely to generate, combined with the cost and expense of merging two large and complex companies that have very different computer systems. So this is my balance in my answer. So if you read the grade descriptors of a high-level answer, they want some balance in there. This is something I've already discussed, but I've just incorporated it into my conclusion as my main disadvantage of the merger. And you can see I've also evaluated through using short and long term here. Well, a final thing that appears in the grade descriptor of a top-level answer is providing solutions. So here's my solution. Therefore, the management team at Pfizer, who have experience of such mergers, should see the integration of these two companies. What I'm trying to say here is it comes from this point here. Allergan was the fourth largest merger or takeover in the previous 15 years. It seems that Pfizer are really quite good at this, and therefore let's put the management team from Pfizer in charge, because they should be able, they've got experience of this and may be able to conduct it quite well. So I hope that essay is useful in thinking about how you can approach an answer to a paper 2 case study based question.